The American dream is a myth. You can't succeed in America alone because you need love and compassion from those around you. The American dream is an idea that we are all familiar with, as it is taught to us from a young age. We are told that if a person is born into unfortunate circumstances, then with the right character and perseverance, they can overcome those circumstances and succeed, because America is the land of opportunity. Basically, if a person works hard enough for long enough, then that person can succeed. My life has been a continuous cycle of unfortunate circumstances, but I persevered because I believed in the American dream. For as long as I can remember, my life has been a question of what I must do to survive. I have matured in an environment of poverty and homelessness with a disabled family plagued with drug addiction. For the majority of my life, I lived in an 8-person household in public subsidized housing. We survived off of my father's monthly disability check, my sister's monthly disability check, and governmental assistance programs like Medicare, food stamps, HUD, and WIC. Without these governmental assistance programs, it would have been impossible for many members of my family to survive, and it would have been impossible for us to remain together for as long as we did. When I was 16 years old, I became homeless because my family was evicted and banned from public subsidized housing. There was a police raid on my family's apartment for alleged drug distribution and possession, a reckoning for a close relative's drug addiction. We were evicted and my family was torn apart. For 3 years, we have remained apart, living in between shelters, tents in the woods, and with various relatives, friends, and significant others. When I first became homeless, I lived with a teacher, whilst my father lived in a tent in the woods. He maintained nothing but the clothes on his back, and he had no money to eat. Nearly every day for a week, I had to walk into the woods with my teacher to bring him food so that he would not starve to death. During that time, at the age of 16, I had to call my father and visit my father every day to make sure that he was still alive. When people ask me what that experience felt like, I struggle to describe the feeling. Yet I know it pales in comparison to what my father felt, having to sleep on the ground in a tent while it rained, only a few yards away from the place he had called home for nearly a decade. I have lived in houses without running water and without beds. I have lived in houses with mice, rats, cockroaches, bedbugs, and lice. I have experienced food insecurity, lifelong instability, and the stigma against the poor and the homeless. Through it all, I survived because of governmental assistance programs and the generosity of friends, family, and everyday people. I came from nothing, and yet through perseverance, hard work, and dedication in the face of incredible odds, I am now an aviation flight student at The Ohio State University. OSU has one of the top aviation flight programs in the country. And I attend the university on a full-ride scholarship. I have seemingly achieved the commonly referenced, yet rarely actualized, American dream. I say seemingly because the American dream is a myth. It doesn't matter how hard you work to overcome your circumstances in America because you're born into governmental, economic, and educational institutions and systems designed to maintain the status quo. Many times, circumstance wins. As a child born into poverty and who experienced homelessness for 2 years in America, I had a slim to none chance of escaping that poverty. I was only able to do so because those around me helped me. Despite everything, I know that life has been kinder to me than to most. So today, I would like to talk about what life has been like for my disabled family and I, the programs that help the poor, homeless, and disabled, and what exactly a welfare child can and can't accomplish under the current American systems. I have survived poverty my entire life, and through it all, I've been able to maintain a focus on my education and maintain a high degree of academic success. From the age of 12, I dedicated nearly all of my time and energy to my education to ensure that I had a chance of attending university and building a better life for myself. But when I became homeless, my biggest concerns were, how am I going to put food on the table and how am I going to get a roof over my head? So the dream of higher education that I had been working towards my entire life seemed so inconsequential at the time. The only reason that I had the stability and resources and time to graduate from high school and apply to universities was because those around me helped me. I received help from the institutions and people around me. This included the staff and teachers at Federal Hocking High School, a local church, a local shelter, my friends, family, and everyday people. I was also lucky enough to live in a country with governmental assistance programs like disability, food stamps, Medicare, HUD, and WIC. Here in America, we like to believe that if a person is born into unfortunate circumstances, then they can overcome those circumstances and succeed no matter what. They just need to have the right character and make responsible choices. I've done exactly this since the age of 12. For years, I stayed out of trouble, maintained a 4.0 GPA, involved myself in numerous extracurricular activities, and numerous community service activities. For the last 2 years of high school, I attended Ohio University full-time. I graduated with honors on my diploma, my portfolio, and my senior project, and as valedictorian of my class. For all intents and purposes, I was the perfect student. I was able to come to school every morning and be the perfect student, despite having not eaten the night before because my house had no food, and having to sleep on the floor the night before because I had no bed. I did this because I believed that no matter how difficult my life became, I would be able to pull myself up by my bootstraps and succeed, because that is what America had taught me my entire life. But when I became homeless, I realized the lie. It didn't matter how hard I worked or how determined I was to achieve the American dream. If I didn't have a roof over my head or access to educational resources, I wasn't going to get anywhere close. I was lucky enough to have people around me that cared about me and who were as determined as I was to see me graduate and attend university. The American dream demands a tremendous amount of love and compassion from Americans. My father has epilepsy and a damaged shoulder. My mother has myotonic dystrophy, a muscle deterioration disorder. These disabilities have prevented them from keeping jobs my entire life. Despite how little they themselves had, they were always there to lend a hand to those in need. They have done everything in their power to ensure that my family remains together and to ensure that I have a bright future. They have survived their adversities through their perseverance and strength. However, they wouldn't have been able to get anywhere if they didn't have support from the government and from friends and family. It was my father's disability checks and other governmental assistance programs and the generosity of friends and family that have helped my family survive through all of these years. Because of my family's experiences with poverty, homelessness, and having disabilities, I understand how indifferent our society at large can be when it comes to the poor, homeless, and disabled. Yet I also realize the generosity and compassion that characterize so many people in this community. People have the capacity to be generous and compassionate. When presented with the opportunities and resources to help others, they will often do so. I believe that education is a stepping stone out of poverty. We need to break the barriers that prevent youth who are poor, homeless, and disabled from taking that first step. However, I don't want us to just understand that we each have a responsibility to others. I want us to understand that the systems that we live under also have a responsibility to us. Governmental assistance programs that help provide some of the basic necessities of life for the poor, homeless, and disabled are necessary and good and should be improved and expanded. In today's world and political climate, there is a lot of stigma against the poor and the homeless, and the programs that help the poor and homeless survive. Many times I have personally experienced this stigma. This stigma needs to be addressed, and people and communities need to educate themselves about the causes and effects of poverty. I want you to understand that the poor and homeless are not lazy. Many times they did not make mistakes that led them down that path, but are there simply because of mere circumstances. Even if a person makes mistakes that leads them down a path of poverty and homelessness, no one deserves to remain in that position simply because of a lack of resources, opportunities, and humanity. For those who are born poor, it is basically impossible to escape that poverty. My success, despite the odds, is not an example that the system works, but that the system is deeply flawed as the system created those odds. The system is built so that there are always those who are rich and those who are poor. The only difference between me and someone living on the streets is that I was lucky and they were not. I was lucky enough to be around people who approached me in my situation with kindness, compassion, and understanding rather than judgment or condescension. The actions of everyday people had a monumental impact on my life. Every day, we choose whether or not to act with love and compassion. And every day, those choices impact those around us. These choices can save a life, or they can condemn it. Compassion can take the form of governmental assistance programs that help promote the financial and educational welfare of its citizens. These programs help level the playing field between the rich and the poor. Without governmental assistance programs that help provide some of the basic necessities of life, I wouldn't have been able to focus on my education, and I wouldn't be on a path to building a better life for myself and my family, and many members of my family wouldn't be alive today. These governmental assistance programs are important, necessary, and good, and should be expanded and improved. However, the governmental assistance programs as they exist today are difficult to navigate and are extremely limited and strict, especially for those who have little resources and time. Programs like HUD, disability, and food stamps are very strict about who can use them and when, and don't really provide the stability for those who need them the most. These programs should be expanded to meet a wider variety of people, funded more, and easier to navigate. I was 16 when I became homeless, meaning that many of the governmental assistance programs designed to help people like me couldn't do anything until I was 18. Governmental assistance programs that help the poor, homeless, and disabled who are youth are severely limited in this country. Communities and the individual person can also do their part to help with the issues of poverty and homelessness. People should refrain from spreading outdated and false stereotypes about the poor and homeless. They should instead educate themselves about the causes and effects of poverty, things like institutional racism, generational poverty, the prison industrial complex, the opioid crisis. The list goes on and on. These factors are only worsened by the limited existence and access to governmental assistance programs. Many universities are not faultless in this system. Their admissions and financial aid processes are set up for those in middle class and upper class families rather than for those who are homeless or poor. Education is a stepping stone out of poverty, but this path is often left unavailable to poor students. Universities should create and fund programs that help support poor and homeless students. I know from personal experience that many poor youth feel as if education is outside of their reach, when all they need is the right resources and support to succeed. Most importantly, People, communities, institutions, and the government should give the poor and homeless an outlet for our voice. People deserve to know what poverty is really like for those around them. The people in the government making decisions about these issues often have no lived experiences with them. The poor and homeless deserve to have a say in how these issues are taught and addressed. It would be a great opportunity for those who are poor and homeless to speak about our experiences and feel like our lives and voices matter. I did not achieve the American dream of going from rags to riches with nothing but perseverance and hard work, because that is impossible today in America without a tremendous amount of love and compassion from Americans. To succeed in America, you need help from Americans and the governing institutions and systems that make up America. Because of my experiences, I have realized that the only difference between me and someone living on the streets is that I was lucky and they were not. I was lucky enough to be around people who wanted to do some good in their lives without thinking of what they would gain for themselves. As you go forth in the world, I urge you to embrace others with an open mind and an open heart, and to not forget those who have not been afforded the same privileges and opportunities that we have. I urge you to exercise your rights as citizens, to change the systems that we live under, to ensure that every person has the basic necessities and opportunities of life, regardless of circumstances. I believe that every person has the capacity to do some good in their lives. If there is anything you are to learn from the story of my life, I hope that it is that small acts of kindness can have a monumental impact on someone's life. And amazing things happen when we care for one another. Regardless of your personal or political beliefs on how a person ends up in a situation where they need help, I urge you to care for your fellow man and provide that help wherever you can. Thank you.